So hello everyone. So today we will be talking about how you can get prepared for your system design interviews and like how you can do well in your system design new grad interviews. It has to be very well noted that in new grad interviews you don't need much of system design, just you need to know the basics first of all, and but you need to know the basics very well, because when you go into a company and you start writing code and you start building products, you don't do it in a disorganized way. You have to do it in a well organized, well maintained, well structured code, and you have to do it in a well designed way to be very important. This is a very important thing that you have to note. Like you do DSA, like the way you do DSA, you just write some code, run against some test cases, and get a verdict like AC or some other wrong or TLE. In real life, you don't get things like that, because in real life you build products for the users. So you need to keep in mind about many things like scalability, fault tolerance, and many other things. Okay, so in this video we will be discussing how as a beginner or how as a fresher you can start preparing for system design and you can do well for those machine coding rounds or those system design coding rounds. Okay, so first of all you have to understand that what is system design. Okay, so basically if I talk about what is system design, so basically system design is like planning software or planning some product before writing the code for it. So if I talk about a simple, very simple software, which is let's say WhatsApp. We Every one of us uses WhatsApp, right? So how would you means design WhatsApp on a very high level? Like means you, what is the very basic features you should have in WhatsApp? Like one user should be able to message another user, so this is one of the basic functionalities. Another function means another very important feature that WhatsApp needs to have is that it should be always available. So high availability is very important in WhatsApp. Okay, so like this you have to identify the topics or the features that is very important. Then you have to identify the topics which are sub important or like not very important but good to have. So and then the other features like which are optional, like you can have or you can't. Okay, so the mandatory requirements you have to implement them, otherwise the product becomes null and void. And the non-mandatory requirements you can implement them if they don't affect the mandatory requirements. Okay, so this is a very basic overview how you go about the about designing a product. So basically if we talk about the things that you have to remember in a system design interview is that first of all understand the requirements very very well. Try to communicate with the interviewer and try to understand what the interviewer is trying to say. Okay, so try to understand the requirements of the product, try to understand the mandatory requirements of the product. So the mandatory requirements you have to implement them, right? So uh, listen to the interviewer, try to clarify the requirements, and take the mandatory requirements at the beginning and then implement them. And then you can think about the non-mandatory requirements. If I talk about the second thing, that is scalability. So scalability is a very important topic again. Like your product or your software is running well for 10 users, but let's say your product gets very famous and like thousands of users are using it. So if your code is not scalable, if your software is not scalable, so it will crash when thousands of users are using it, right? So think about scalability, like write a code in such a way that it is easily scalable, like without any major changes or without making much change, your code must be scalable. So this is what I mean by scalability. Like in low level terms, your code must be scalable without making any major changes. Okay, similarly think about fault tolerance. So let's say you have 5 servers, okay, for running your software. If one of the server fails, your whole software must not fail, your whole uh, system must not fail. So you should design the system in such a way that if even if any of the components of it, or if any of the servers fail, your software or your system should run on the remaining 4 servers or on the other components. Okay, so a high level example of this will be like, let's say you get 100 requests per second and you have 5 servers. So you distribute that, I have 1000 requests per second, I have 5 servers, so 200 requests per second. So now if one of them fails, So those 200 requests that the particular server was serving must not fail. So what you can do, you can distribute those 200 requests among the other four servers. Okay, so now each of the four servers is delivering 250 requests instead of 200. So the system will be a bit slow, but it is at least performing, it is not like crashing. So that's what I mean by fault tolerance. So design for performance again, like try to optimize as much performance as you can. So like let's say try to distribute load as much as possible. So if the servers has less load, they will be much more efficient, the response time will be much more less, so the performance will be much higher. Okay, so see, the fourth, fifth, and sixth problem is very clear. Try to use the appropriate architecture and design pattern, and try to use the most efficient DSA, or means data structures and algorithms. So many people think, what is the real life application of data structures and algorithms? So this is the real life applications of data structures and algorithms. So like in autocomplete design, or in autocomplete system design, you use try. Okay, so basically means in this you get to know what are the real life applications of data structures and algorithms. Okay, so try to understand the requirements and figure out which algorithm will perform the best here, which data structure will be the most useful here. Okay, so and accordingly write or implement those data structures and algorithms in the code. Okay, so these are the very important things you should remember in a system design interview, right? Now if I talk about the low level design, or the low level topics that you have to understand, first of all is the oops of concept. So we had a class of oops before that. So basically oops is very well used in low level design. Like you have to break down your code into different classes, into different functions, where each function does a particular thing, and you don't integrate two separate operations in a single function or in a single class. You keep things separate, you decouple things, so that when something goes wrong, it's easier to handle, it's easier to fix. Similarly, you have to read our data structures and algorithms, so that is DSA only. But here you have to think about that which data structure will be the most appropriate to be used. So it is not the conventional DSA problem, but based on the given problem statement, based on the given real life problem statement, you have to figure out which data structure or which algorithm will be the most efficient to be used. Similarly, you also read about the API design and development, like what are the standard practices for developing an API, like what should be the input parameters of an API, what should be the expected error handling of an API design, and what should be the expected response of an API doing a particular function or a particular task. Similarly, read about the difference between microservices and monoliths, like what is the advantages of microservice, what is the advantage of monoliths, what is the disadvantage of microservice, what is the disadvantage of monoliths. Read about caching, like what is the write through cache, what is a write back cache. So there are different techniques of caching, and in which scenario which caching will be more optimal to be used. So read about those things. Load balancing and scaling. So when I talked about performance, load balancing is a very important topic. Like how do you balance load on your servers, like how do you distribute load on your servers, and what happens when one server fail, how do you distribute that the load on that faulty server among the other servers. So things like this, like load balancing, and how do you scale up your users, like how do you scale up the load, and things like this. Okay, so and the last thing is like error handling and fault tolerance. Like if some component of your system fails, if some component of your system is not working, how do you handle that, how do you keep the system working without means even if the component, if some components are not working. Okay, so this is some of the very important topics of a low level design. In low level design, you should be means you can expect to write some code. Like in my media.net interview, the last round was LLD, or and in also like in the second round of my cred interview, it was a machine coding round. So like the interviewer will give you a certain task, and he will give you certain functions. Like for me, they asked me to do some kind of a Google map type of feature. So like they gave some functions, and they told me that this function is expected to do this thing, and like the expected number of, or the expected load will be this. So how do you implement this function and this class? So things like this. Okay, So, and if we come to the high level design, so in high level design it's more about like the upper level design thing, like you have to design the things, not really code it, but you have to tell the interviewer that how are you planning to build that product, like how are you planning to distribute the load, how are you planning to like uh, cache the data, or how are you planning to means how are you planning to store the data, like what will be the schema of the database and so on. Okay, so some of the very popular or some of the very important topics of high level design are API rate limiting. I got this in my Microsoft PPO interview. So you can understand how important is that for means these topics are for system design interviews. So second one is the autocomplete feature. So like when you type something, like you get autocomplete suggestions. How is it implemented? So here try is used. So this is a very good real life application of a data structure, means the try data structure, right? So the third one is WhatsApp or any messaging app like WhatsApp, Discord, Telegram. Like how do you design a scalable messaging system where there can be end to end user messages or there can be group messages as well. Okay, the second one is Tinder or Bumble, like a dating app where you get matches based means based on some location preferences or something like that. So Tinder and Bumble are another, means it's another topic you should study. The fifth one is Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So like it's a social media platform where you connect with people, you post things, you follow some, you have some followers, things like this as social media app system design. So and the sixth one is Netflix, YouTube, a video streaming app, so where you play some video. So read about Netflix and YouTube system design. So these are all amazing articles, you will enjoy reading them. Okay, and the seventh one is Uber or Rapido or Ola, like a riding service, like where you book a cab, you book a ride, and like you go from a place to another. So how do you design such a system? So these are some of the very popular topics that are asked in the system design, high level system design interviews. Apart from this, like system design interviews also revolve around like open ended questions. So these the topics may not be like content to this things only, like it can be very generic. Like they may ask you to design a social networking platform, but it may have very different requirements from Facebook. Okay, so in that case you have to improvise and rethink that how you should implement them. So there is no like hard and fast rule that if you have read a social media system design means article, or you have watched a system design, sorry, social networking system design video, you should only design in that way. So if the requirements are different, so you should design in a different way so that the requirements are met. Okay, so as simple as that. So now if I talk about the resources, so God of Sense playlist is a very good resource to get started in system design. He has really explained things in very simple and efficient way. Another thing is Sandeep calls YouTube course or YouTube playlist. So he generally has videos on high level design. So you should go and watch that playlist. And if I talk about the interview questions, so again Scalar comes to the rescue. So Scalar interview questions is very useful again in this case because it really summarizes all the topics very well. Like if you read that Scalar sheet, like you should be good to go, and watch these two playlists that I suggested, you should be good to go. Okay, so the resources will be shared with you after the session. So don't worry, like as I told in CS fundamentals, like if you study system design for 2 weeks before the interview, you will be good to go. Okay, so I think this should be enough for your system design interviews for new grad level or for internships. For internships, you don't have system designs in general because interns are not expected to design systems. But for new grads in some companies, you have system design interviews. For example, Coordination has, Cred has, Media.net has. So many companies has, except Fangame. Most companies have a system design interview at the end. So you should really know the basics and the things that I told. If you know these things, and like if you go and study these things, and if you are prepared with these things, you should have no more problems like going through the system design interviews and like getting your offers, because system design interviews are generally the last round. So you don't want to get rejected in the last round, I hope so. you should be prepared with these topics. So I think that's all for this system design roadmap for new grad interviews, and I would be happy to take some questions from you. Otherwise, I think we can end it here. Like, the resources will be shared to you. Don't worry. Like, just as the previous sessions, the doc with the resource links will be shared to you by the crackDSA team. So if you guys have some questions, you can. Is in full stack the system design? No, like in system design is generally asked for SD roles, because like unless you design a system, unless you have a proper design of a product, that the database will be looking like this, so the load will be balanced like this, so you can't implement them. So first you plan a thing, then you implement. So in SD generally system design questions are asked. For full stack you don't really need system design, there you need more of development, I guess. So I think any other questions, or I think that will be the end of this session, and I think this is also the last session for this boot camp. I hope like everyone has enjoyed this boot camp. When we come back next time, we will be coming back with a more full-fledged course. So we will be coming back with more organized sessions, and we hope that you love it better. So if you guys don't have any more questions, I think that we can end it here. So I guess nobody has any more questions. So we can end it here. So that's it for this video. That's it for this session. See you next time. Bye.